My boyfriend is best friends with someone who's hurt me. What do I do? My boyfriend and I have only recently started seeing each other, and even now, it feels surreal to say those words. For years, he had been just a friend, one of the people in the background of my life, steady and kind, always there but never quite in the spotlight. We first met at the start of medical school, a time that feels both like yesterday and a lifetime ago. Back then, I was a bundle of nerves and ambition, carrying the weight of dreams I'd been nurturing since I was a child. He was different, quieter, almost reserved. Yet, there was something about him, a quiet strength, a sense of reliability that drew people to him, including me. Our friendship grew naturally, slipping into place like a puzzle piece you didn't even realize was missing. Over the course of 3 years, we became part of a tight-knit group of friends, 12 of us in total, bound together by the shared trials and triumphs of medical school. We spent late nights cramming for exams, dissecting cadavers, and commiserating over the endless stream of lectures and rotations. Each of us had our quirks, our unique roles within the group, but my boyfriend, though he wasn't my boyfriend then, was always the glue that held us together. The peacemaker. The listener. The one everyone trusted. I've since learned that during all those years of friendship, he harbored a secret crush on me. It's strange, looking back, to think of all the moments we shared, laughing over coffee, swapping notes, leaning on each other during stressful times without realizing the depth of his feelings. Fate, or perhaps just our own obliviousness, kept us from crossing the line into something more until a few months ago. It's funny how life works that way. One moment, everything is as it has always been, and the next, everything changes. A single conversation, a single confession, and suddenly the landscape of your life shifts entirely. I remember the night he told me. We were sitting on a park bench, the air crisp with the first hint of autumn. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with the edge of his jacket, his eyes darting to mine and then away again. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady but soft, as if he was afraid of breaking the fragile silence between us. "I've liked you for a long time," he admitted. "I just thought you should know." At first, I didn't know what to say. The revelation caught me off guard, like a sudden gust of wind. But as his words sank in, so did something else, a warmth, a sense of rightness I couldn't quite explain. Looking at him in that moment, I realized that perhaps I had been waiting for this too, even if I hadn't known it. That night marked the beginning of something new, something exciting and terrifying all at once. But of course, life is never as simple as a love story unfolding neatly on its own. Relationships, especially those born from friendships, come with their own complications. And in our case, the complications were immediate and unavoidable, tied to the very group of friends that had brought us together. One of the girls in our group, a woman we'll call Lauren, has never liked me. She's 30 years old, a few years older than most of us, and from the moment we met, our relationship has been turbulent, to say the least. At first, we bonded over our shared experience of being older than the majority of our classmates. We found common ground in our interests, in the challenges we faced as non-traditional students navigating the chaos of medical school. For a time, I even thought of her as a friend, a somewhat prickly and unpredictable friend, but a friend nonetheless. That friendship, however, didn't last. Over the past 2 years, Lauren and I have clashed more times than I can count. Sometimes it's over petty things, a disagreement during a group project, a snide comment during a conversation. Other times, it's over deeper issues, things I can't even articulate without dredging up emotions I'd rather leave buried. There's an edge to her, a sharpness that cuts deeper than it should, and more often than not, I find myself on the receiving end of her disdain. We initially bonded because we were older than the bulk of our classmates, which felt like an invisible thread tying us together in those early days. Both of us understood the weight of being slightly out of step with the majority of our peers, our conversations often laced with jokes about how we were the old souls of the group. We shared similar interests, too, books that none of our classmates seemed to read, hobbies that felt too niche for the whirlwind of medical school, and a slightly cynical perspective on life that came from having lived just a little bit longer. At first, I thought I'd found a kindred spirit in Lauren, someone who might understand me in ways others didn't. But as time passed, the cracks in our dynamic began to show. What started as friendly debates turned into sharp arguments, her wit becoming less playful and more cutting. She had a way of turning the smallest misunderstandings into battlegrounds, wielding words like weapons, her tone laced with condescension. Over the last 2 years, we've butted heads more times than I can count, sometimes over trivial things, like the best way to approach a group project, and other times over unspoken tensions that lingered long after the argument itself had ended. It wasn't just the clashes that eroded our friendship, though. It was the aftermath, the way she would ice me out, her disapproval hanging over me like a storm cloud. And the worst part? I know I've hurt her too. I'm not blameless in this tangled mess of emotions and misunderstandings. There were moments when my own insecurities bled into our interactions, when I let my frustration or jealousy get the better of me. I've said things I regret, things I wish I could take back. But apologies only go so far when the foundation of a friendship has already begun to crumble. My boyfriend knows about some of it, just the surface level stuff, the arguments that couldn't be hidden from the rest of the group. But I've tried to keep the details to myself, to spare him the burden of my frustrations. He's an anxious person, prone to overthinking, and I know how much Lauren means to him. She's not just another member of our friend group, she's his best friend. Someone who has been by his side long before we became a couple, someone he trusts and relies on in ways I'm still learning to understand. It's a delicate balance, this unspoken agreement to avoid certain topics for the sake of harmony. But it's a balance I find myself struggling to maintain. Because the truth is, Lauren doesn't just dislike me, she seems to resent me. And her resentment has only grown since my relationship with my boyfriend became more than just friendship. She's obsessed with him in ways that go beyond what I'd consider normal for a platonic friendship. There's a possessiveness to her actions, a constant need to insert herself into his life in ways that make me feel like an outsider looking in. She buys him presents regularly, thoughtful, expensive gifts that feel almost too intimate for the nature of their relationship. She knows his favorite brands, his favorite books, the little details about his life that she uses to weave herself deeper into his world. And then there are the group trips. Whenever our friend group plans a getaway, Lauren always insists on sharing a room with him. Worse, she tries to share a bed with him. Even now, it sends a chill down my spine to think about it, the way she would brush off anyone's objections, claiming it was harmless, that it was just how they'd always done things. Back then, before he and I were together, I didn't feel like I had the right to say anything. But now it feels like a direct challenge, a deliberate act of undermining the boundaries of our relationship. I've tried to rationalize it, to tell myself that it's just her way of showing how much she cares about him. That it's not as threatening as it feels. But deep down, I can't shake the discomfort, the gnawing sense of disrespect. It's not just about the gifts or the sleeping arrangements, it's about the way she looks at him, the way she talks about him as if he belongs to her. As if their history, their bond, gives her a claim over him that I can't possibly understand. And the worst part? She's married. Sometimes Lauren's behavior crosses the line from friendly affection into something else entirely, something darker, more possessive. It's subtle, the way she acts around him, but it's there. I've seen her bristle when I hold his hand in front of her, her smile stiff and strained as if she's forcing herself to play along. I've caught the flicker of irritation in her eyes when he turns his attention to me instead of her during conversations. There are moments when her jealousy feels almost palpable, an unspoken tension that hangs heavy in the air. It's not just the jealousy that gets to me, it's the way she acts as though she has some kind of claim over him, as though their friendship gives her a right to insert herself into every corner of his life. She's always finding excuses to monopolize his time, texting him at all hours, pulling him into private conversations during group hangouts, and even showing up unannounced at his apartment. I know they've been friends for years, but the intensity of her behavior has always made me uncomfortable. And now that we're together, it feels even worse. It feels like a deliberate attempt to assert her place in his life, to remind me and maybe even him that she was here first. What makes it all the more confusing, and honestly infuriating, is the fact that Lauren is married. Her husband is a kind, quiet man who doesn't seem to question her relationship with my boyfriend. I don't know if he's oblivious to the way she acts or if he's simply chosen to ignore it, but either way, his acceptance only adds to the complexity of the situation. There's a part of me that wonders how he feels about all of this if he notices the way she lights up around my boyfriend in a way she never seems to around him. But it's not my place to ask, and truthfully, I'm not sure I want to know the answer. My boyfriend, to his credit, has always encouraged me to be open with him. He's told me time and time again that he wants me to feel safe sharing my thoughts and feelings with him, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable they might be. I can't fix what I don't know about, he told me once, his voice earnest and reassuring. It's one of the things I love about him, his willingness to listen, to try to understand. But when it comes to Lauren, I find myself hesitating. It's not that I don't want to talk to him about how she makes me feel. In fact, there are times when the words are right there on the tip of my tongue, desperate to spill out. But something always stops me, a nagging voice in the back of my mind that tells me it's better to stay silent. My boyfriend is an anxious person, someone who internalizes the worries of those around him, and I know how much Lauren means to him. She's not just a friend, she's one of his closest confidants, someone he's relied on for years. I'm afraid that if I tell him how I feel, it will put him in an impossible position, forcing him to choose between us. And yet, keeping it to myself isn't easy either. The more I think about Lauren and her behavior, the more frustrated I become, not just with her, but with him too. I don't understand why she's so important to him, why he continues to let her cross boundaries without saying anything. I've seen him set limits with other friends before, so why not her? Why is it that when it comes to Lauren, he seems blind to the way her actions affect me, or worse, unwilling to address them? This frustration sits heavy in my chest, a weight that grows with each passing day. I'm scared of what it might turn into if I don't find a way to deal with it. Resentment, I think, is the word for it. I can feel it bubbling beneath the surface, threatening to seep into the cracks of our relationship. I don't want to be the kind of partner who demands that someone cut ties with their friends, but at the same time, I don't know how much longer I can ignore the way her presence in his life makes me feel. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about the future, not the happy, daydreamed version of it, but the one where everything goes wrong. I imagine myself growing more and more bitter, the tension between us becoming something we can no longer avoid. I picture arguments and ultimatums, the kind of fights that leave lasting scars. And worst of all, I imagine him choosing her. Not because he doesn't care about me, but because their history is too strong, their bond too deep to break. It's these thoughts that terrify me the most. I've only just begun to let myself hope for something real with him, something lasting, and the idea of it all falling apart before it even has a chance to grow feels unbearable. And yet, part of me wonders if ending things now might be the kinder choice for both of us. If I leave, he won't have to choose. He won't have to carry the weight of my insecurities or the burden of navigating the complicated dynamics between me and Lauren. And I won't have to live in the shadow of their friendship, always wondering if I'll ever truly come first. But I don't want to leave. I really like him more than I've liked anyone in a long time. He makes me feel safe and seen in ways I didn't think were possible. And despite everything, there's a part of me that believes we could make this work, that we could find a way to navigate the messiness of this situation together. I just don't know how to get there, how to bridge the gap between where we are now and the relationship I hope we can have. I can't bring myself to share how Lauren makes me feel. The words get stuck somewhere between my mind and my mouth, tangled in fear and doubt. I've run through the conversation in my head 100 times, imagining his face, the way his brow might furrow in concern or, worse, Confusion. What if he doesn't understand? What if he sees my feelings as jealousy, insecurity, or immaturity? The thought alone is enough to silence me. And yet, the alternative feels equally unbearable. How can I continue to pretend everything is fine when it so clearly isn't? How can I smile through group outings, laugh at her jokes, and watch as she hovers over him like a shadow, knowing that every unspoken word is slowly eating away at me? Part of me thinks it might be better to break up with him now, before the cracks in our relationship grow into something irreparable. If I leave, he won't have to deal with my discomfort, my inability to navigate this situation with grace. And I won't have to live with the constant fear of losing him to her, or worse, losing myself in the process. But then there's the other part of me, the part that clings to him like a lifeline. I really like him. More than that, I think I'm falling for him in a way that feels both exhilarating and terrifying. He makes me laugh on days when the weight of medical school feels like too much to bear. He listens when I speak, his attention unwavering, as though my words are the only ones that matter. He makes me feel like I'm not just a part of his world but the center of it, except when Lauren is around. The thought of giving that up feels like cutting off a part of myself. I want to believe that we can overcome this, that our connection is strong enough to weather the storm of my insecurities and her interference. But wanting and believing are two different things, and I'm not sure which one will win out in the end. I don't really know what to do. Every option feels like a gamble, a choice between risking my heart or protecting it. And the worst part is, I feel ridiculous even having this conundrum. I'm a grown adult, for God's sake, someone who has faced down the grueling demands of medical school, survived sleepless nights and impossible exams. I should be able to handle this. I should be able to suck it up and deal with it like a rational, mature person. But no matter how hard I try to convince myself, the discomfort remains, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts. Am I overreacting? Maybe. But emotions aren't rational, and no amount of logic can erase the way Lauren's presence makes me feel disrespected, overshadowed, unimportant. Should I just talk to him? Probably. But the thought of laying my feelings bare, of risking his perception of me or our relationship, makes my stomach churn. What should I do? In the end, I find myself sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, his name glowing on the screen. My heart feels heavy, weighed down by the gravity of what I'm about to do. I type out a message, erasing and retyping the words over and over again until they finally feel right. When I hit send, I feel both a sense of relief and a surge of anxiety. Can we talk? I need to be honest with you about something. The message is simple, but it carries the weight of everything I've been holding back. I don't know how he'll respond, or if this conversation will bring us closer or push us apart. But I know one thing for sure, I can't keep carrying this alone. Whether it's the beginning of the end or the start of something stronger, I have to take the chance. For myself. For us. As I wait for his reply, I remind myself that love isn't supposed to be easy. It's messy and complicated and sometimes unbearably difficult. But it's also worth fighting for if both people are willing to try. And I hope, more than anything, that he's willing to try too.